Another technique in factoring polynomials is factoring the sum or difference of two cubes. Before we go to that, let us review some important matters first related to this one. So first one, let's write each of the following as a cube of a number. Like 8. 8 is equal to 2 cubed. How about 1 over 27? Okay, the cube root of 1 is 1 and the cube root of 27 is 3. Or 1 is the same as 1 cube, then 27 is the same as 3 cube. So this is the same as 1/3 cube. For number 3, 125 is 5 cube. Therefore, 125x cube is 5x cube. Number 4, 343 is the cube of 7 or 7 cube. And then for A, let's divide 18 by 3. 18 divided by 3 is 6. And then let's divide the exponent of B. 12 divided by 3 is 4. B to the 4th. So this whole quantity, cube. So 7a raised to the 6th, b to the 4th, cube. Number 5. Okay, so I want you to do number 5 and number 6. Okay. Then we must also know how to find the cube root fast. So like cube root of 1 is equal to 1. Cube root of 27 is 3. Oh, why 3? If you multiply 3 by itself, okay, 3 times, then that will be 27. Or 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Okay. Cube root of 125, okay, in connection to number 3 there, if you see, that is 5. The cube root of 64 is 4. The cube root of 343, we had mentioned earlier, is 7. How about this one? And this one? Let us also review how to multiply polynomials. Like specifically, if you are asked to multiply this binomial and trinomial and this also. How do we multiply that? We just multiply horizontally, term by term. So, x times x squared is equal to x cubed. So we are applying the distributive property of multiplication over addition / subtraction. Next, x times negative xy is negative x squared y. Again, x times x will be x squared and then times y. So x squared y. Positive times negative is negative. Then, for the next term, x times y squared is positive xy squared. Then let's continue with y. Y times x squared is positive yx squared. Then y times negative xy is y times negative xy. So we will have now y and y, that will be y squared. Negative xy squared. Then for the last term, y times y squared is positive y cubed. But we can see here that we have negative x squared y and positive yx squared. So x squared y and yx squared are just the same. But then one is negative and the other is positive. So we can just cancel them because their sum is 0. And the same with positive xy squared and negative xy squared. Positive and negative, the same terms, okay, that will also be 0. Therefore, we have x cubed only plus y cubed. So we have now a sum of 2 cubes. For the second one, okay, let's do the same thing. X times x squared is x cubed. X times xy will be x times x squared. So positive x squared and then y. Then x times y squared is positive xy squared. For this negative y times x squared is negative y x squared. The negative y times xy is negative. Again, negative times positive is negative. Then we now have y times y, so y squared. Xy squared. Negative xy squared. And then, finally, negative y times y squared is negative y cubed. So, just like in the first one, we can see here similar terms which are opposite in sign, like x squared y and negative yx squared. X squared y and yx squared are just the same. One is positive, one is negative. So we cancel them because their sum is 0. The same with xy squared and negative xy squared. The sum is 0. So our final answer is x cubed minus y cubed. So what is the relevance of this? This particular video is dealing with the factoring of a sum or difference of two cubes. This goes to say that if we have a sum of two cubes, then the factoring will be x plus y. X is the cube root of the first term, y is the cube root of y cubed, or the second term. So we have x plus y. Then take note, the first term here in the trinomial is the square of this x. Okay, it's the square of the first term. Then this one is the product of the two terms, but opposite in sign. Opposite, okay, it has an opposite sign with the sign in the binomial. Okay, so again, the second term in the trinomial is the product of these two numbers in the binomial. Okay, but it has an opposite sign as compared to that binomial. And then the third term will be the square of the second term here. Okay, now if we have x cubed minus cube, if we are asked to factor something like x cubed minus y cubed, the factoring will be, okay, the cube root of these two, x and y, or x minus y. Okay, if this is minus, this is also minus. And then again, the first term of the trinomial is the square of this x. Then the second term is the product of the two. If the sign here is negative, the sign here will become, should be positive. And then the last term here is the square of this second term. So this will be the pattern that we're going to use now that we are about to factor sum and difference of two cubes. We have learned that to factor x cubed plus y cubed, okay, its factors will be x plus y times x squared minus xy plus y squared. So if we have a sum of two cubes, we have the sum of their cube roots, and then for this other factor, for this trinomial, it will be composed of the square of the first term here, then the product of these two terms, then the square of the second term. If we have here a sum, then this binomial will also be a sum. Then here, there will be a minus sign. On the other hand, if this is difference of cubes, x cubed minus y cubed, this will be minus also, and this one should be plus or positive. So let's factor number 1, y cubed minus 27. Basically, you must know how to find the cube root first. The cube root of y cubed is y. Okay, again, to find the cube root of y cubed, you divide the exponent 3 by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. So y raised to 1, or simply y. And then the cube root of 27 is 3. So this will be the binomial. And since this is minus, you also put minus sign here. Then for the trinomial part, we square the first one. That will be y squared. We multiply them 2. Y times 3 is 3y. Since this is minus, we put here plus. And then for the third term, square of the second number. Square of 3 is 9. So the factors of y cubed minus 27 this is equal to y minus 3 times the quantity y squared plus 3y plus 9. For number 2, 27, y cubed, and 125 are also all cubes, all perfect cubes. So we proceed to find the cube roots. The cube root of 27 again is 3. Let's form the binomial now. We have 3, and the cube root of y cube is y. Then plus, the cube root of 125 is 5. Then times, we square 3y, 9y squared. We multiply this to 3 times 5 is 15 times y. Again, 3y times 5 is 15y. Since this is addition, we have here subtraction. Then plus 5. 5 squared is 25. So we have quantity 3y plus 5 times the quantity 9y squared minus 15y plus 25. For number 3, 64 is a cube, 343 is also a cube, and also with b to the 6. But a to the 4th is not a perfect cube, and so with a, because it has an exponent which is less than 3. But basically, when we are factoring, actually, we must look for the greatest common factor first. And it happens that the greatest common factor here is a. We factor out a. So we are left with 64. Then a to the 4th divided by a is a cubed. Then minus 343. A divided by a is 1. So no more a inside. Then b raised to 6. So these are now all perfect cubes. So we are now ready to factor it again. We have a times the cube root of 64 is 4. Cube root of a cube is a. Then we copy minus the cube root of 343 is 7. Then b to the 6. 6 divided by 3, 2. So this is the binomial part. We get the trinomial now. We square 4a, 16a squared. Again, 4 squared is 16, then a squared, a squared. Since this is minus, we will have here plus in the trinomial. Let's multiply the 2. 4 times 7 is 28. 28, then ab squared. Then let us square 7b squared. So plus 49b, then 2. So if we square b squared, that will be b to the 4th. Number 4, 8a raised to the 12th power plus 216. Now when the numbers are quite large, you will try to simplify first by dividing by the greatest common factor if there is. Now if we try to divide 216 by 8, the answer will be 27. And 27 is actually a cube. So let's proceed to divide. So we will divide or factor out 8. So we factor out 8. So we are left with a raised to 12 for the first term plus 216 divided by 8 is 27. Now these numbers inside the parentheses are also cubes. So let's now proceed to factor. So we copy 8. Then we now get the cube root of these two terms. The cube root of a to the 12th is a. Then 12 divided by 3 is 4. Plus cube root of 27 is 3. So that's the binomial. For the trinomial, we square a to the 4th. So a, when we square a to the 4th, 4 times 2 is 8. A raised to 8. And then plus this one, subtraction. Okay. Let's multiply the 2. A to the 4th times 3. 3a to the 4th. And then plus 3 squared is 9. So the factorization of 8a raised to the 12th plus 216 is 8 times quantity a to the 4th plus 3 times quantity a to the 8th minus 3a to the 4th plus 9. Number 5. Okay, again we have here a large number, 192. So as I have said earlier, when we are dealing with a large number, we will try to divide it, okay, and try to simplify the numbers in the polynomial. So by dividing or factoring it out. So we can factor 3 here because 192 is divisible by 3. Likewise, there is another common factor which is x. So we are going to factor out the greatest common factor, which is 3x. So if you factor out 3x, then, okay, 3x divided by 3x is 1. Then plus, and then 192 divided by 3 is 64. Then for this x, it was already factored out, so factored or na-divide na siya. And then y to the 9th. Yan. So this is now a cube, and another cube. So this is a sum of 2 cubes. So to factor this completely, let's copy the common factor, 3x. Get the cube root of 1, 1. Then plus, cube root of 64 is 4. Cube root of y to the 9th is y. Okay, 9 divided by 3 is 3. So y cube. Then for the trinomial, square 1, that's 1. Or 1 squared is 1. Then plus, so this will be minus. Multiply them. 1 times 4y cube is 4y cube. Then plus, we square 4y cube, so 4 squared is 16. Y cube squared is y to the 6th. Okay, so when we're getting the cube root, we divide by 3. When we get the square, we multiply the exponent by 2. So please take note of that. So this is now the factorization of this polynomial in number 5. So as usual, I want you to answer number 6 and number 7.